This video is presented by mybookie.ag. What's up, guys? Here are my predictions for the upcoming card this Saturday. Finally, a stacked card on paper. So many great fights all around it. Prelims are even sprinkled with some very interesting fights, but we got prospects on here like Hamza Chimaev. Everybody's wondering how that fight's going to go with Meerschaert, and if he is in fact able to fight Damian Maia like what, a month and a half later. And then we just have fun fights, man. Dallas Cerrone versus Nico Price. Talk about action-packed. Johnny Walker, Ryan Spann. That's just as exciting as well. And of course, we have the controversial and exciting rivalry between Colby Covington and Tyron Woodley. They're finally in the cage after so long of them talking trash about each other and wanting to just beat each other up. But we are going to start with Johnny Walker versus Ryan Spann. They are two strikers, but Ryan Spann has a much better submission game, especially that guillotine choke, man. He's gotten a couple times against the cage after pressuring with his boxing, and they expose their neck trying to take him down out of desperation, and he just has that guillotine choke ready, locked and loaded at all times. While Johnny Walker seems to be extremely unorthodox even still after getting knocked out by Corey Anderson. In his fight against Nikita Krylov, he came out very similar, throwing flying knees, not setting anything up, throwing wild elbows, back fists and stuff like that. But it seems to be he always has that flying knee and side kick to the knee in his arsenal. No matter how he approaches the fight, those are the two strikes you always see him throw. And they both get him in a lot of trouble when they don't necessarily land. And the reason why they're not landing that much is because he's not gauging them that accurately. Now against a guy like Ryan Spann, who's so patient with his boxing, so patient with his stand-up, he could potentially find the side kick to the knee on Ryan Spann and cause some problems there for distance work and potentially make Spann a little bit eager to get in close, and then he falls into a flying knee or something like that. But Ryan Spann has a very long reach as well. He's a very big guy for the light heavyweight division. He can attack Walker at a very similar range, and his boxing is eons ahead of Walker. Walker has no defense really. I mean, it's almost non-existent. His defense is mixed with his offense. The fact that he just moves so much when he's attacking, sometimes he's able to get away from strikes in the process. But when he's backing up a bit or he's trying to find his target and the opponent starts throwing attacks at him, punches, kicks, whatever, his chin is always in the way. It's just always there. And Ryan Spann has extremely precise hands, especially that left uppercut. The right straight is probably his best weapon. And if Walker takes a southpaw stance, he's going to get peppered by that right hand constantly. And I will say this here, if Ryan Spann hits Walker with that right hand, the fight might end right there. Not because of the right straight, but because what follows afterward. Spann has a very good 1-2 entry into a chained on combination. After he lands that right straight, he does not let you go. His pressure with the combinations after that punch puts everybody in trouble. He's so patient when he's downloading the data, but when he finally connects on you, he becomes an entirely different fighter where he's on the onslaught. He's just trying to take you out. And that's the thing, man. If Walker gets hit by that right straight and then chained on by combinations, I don't think he's going to have the intelligent reactions to get away from the combinations. I think he's going to get TKO'd out there. And that goes right to my prediction for this fight. I'm going to go with Ryan Spann. I'm going to go by a 3rd round TKO. Johnny Walker also has worse cardio. Spann can go 3 rounds pretty easily, and Walker in his Nikita Krylov fight, he was gassing out after like the 2nd round or so. And the other thing is, if Spann wants to go for takedowns and slow down Walker, that seems to be a very good game plan that Krylov showed as well. Krylov is a striker with a good ground game, but his wrestling to neutralize Walker was very effective. And then we go to Hamza Chimaev versus Meerschaert. I talked about this a little bit before in my video discussing both of Chimaev's upcoming opponents, Meerschaert and Damian Maia, which is kind of crazy they're still doing that. Here's the facts. Meerschaert is a better striker. Hamza is most likely a better overall wrestler slash grappler. Definitely a better wrestler, but there are some hints of doubt for Chimaev's ground game against Meerschaert. The fact that Meerschaert has, I think, the most submissions in the middleweight division, as well as he just constantly attempts them, constantly fighting off his back. That can be almost like what we would have expected with Khabib versus Tony Ferguson in a sense, right? When you see someone like Khabib, who has a very similar grappling style to Chimaev, very similar pressure and everything they do on the ground, a lot of people anticipate someone like Tony Ferguson's grappling, who's so active off his back, throwing strikes and constantly attempting submissions and not gassing out. That would be the kind of grappling style to combat Khabib's. Is that similar thing going to happen in this fight where Meerschaert is very active off his back and Chimaev has a similar grappling style to Khabib? I don't think it's going to be enough. I do honestly see Meerschaert kind of giving up positions on Chimaev where Chimaev starts dominating the fight further on. And people will ask, how would the fight get to the ground, right? Gerald Meerschaert is a threat on the feet. He's very big as well, much bigger than Chimaev is. But Gerald just doesn't have good takedown defense. He really doesn't. He welcomes the ground game a lot, and he keeps an extremely long, wide stance, looking to counter the opponent. This one he's probably going to be pressuring a little bit more, stalk and then counter, but the fact that his stance is so wide is going to allow Khamzat to attack with that single leg from a distance and turn it into whatever he wants. He just has to watch his neck on the way down. That's really the biggest threat in the wrestling for Chimaev. If Joe wants to use the cage to wall walk, he's going to absolutely get dominated in the fight 100%, just like Khamzat's last two opponents. So my prediction for this fight, I gotta go with Khamzat Chimaev. I'm gonna go by a decision win. It will be very impressive if Chimaev submits Meerschaert. And if he does that, he's a step closer to the fight zone like Damian Maia, right? But this is just how I see it goes. Gerald Meerschaert comes out there at the center of the cage, tries to take the center before Chimaev does to establish assertiveness in the cage and a control for the octagon. But Chimaev dives to the legs right away. Meerschaert's wide stance is not going to allow him to evade or counter the takedown, and he's going to be fighting off that single leg for a little bit. Chimaev turns it into a double leg takedown after some fight back from Meerschaert, gets it to the ground. Meerschaert's probably going to go for a guillotine choke. Chimaev is able to withstand it or avoids it completely, gets the takedown to the cage, works his magic there. Meerschaert starts to get tired in the second round when this continues on, and Chimaev's going to keep that pressure and dominance throughout the entire fight. And then we go to the co-main event. Donald Cerrone versus Niko Price. Man, I cannot wait for this fight. Two guys just throw down at the center of the cage, fan favorites, but the thing about Cerrone is he's not a brawler, right? People want to think of him as some sort of brawler, but he is just not at all. Nothing about him is a brawling style. Nothing about him is a back and forth kind of fighter. When he's on the back foot, he tends to be losing the fight every single time. Whether it be against Nate Diaz's boxing with the volume, whether it be against Darren Till's precision with pressure, whether it be against Conor McGregor with a very similar concept, whether it be against Tony Ferguson, very similar to what happened with Nate Diaz. But the thing is, Donald Cerrone does much better against brawlers, which is what Niko Price is. Niko Price is just wild. He doesn't gauge or download or do anything of the sort to get the hang of the opponent before he attacks. He just goes head first and sees what happens. And because of that approach, you do see some weird knockouts that he's able to get. I mean, while he's on his back and he's hammer fisting Randy Brown into unconsciousness, or he's heel kicking James Vick and knocking him out senseless as well. I mean, you got some weird knockouts from Niko Price, and it's because of his wildness and his love to be wild, I guess. I mean, he just loves the way he fights. And he said he's not trying to be technical at all. He's just trying to go head first at the opponent, clash with them, and win through that collision. Now, how he's going to do that against someone like Donald Cerrone, who's going to keep the front kick on him, probably keep some side kicks on him, and has that double leg takedown ready to go at any given moment. Cerrone's wrestling has gotten so much better throughout the years. His striking has been somewhat the same. He's added a sidekick to his arsenal, and he's been rushing with switch stance boxing combinations, which has gotten him into trouble, TKO'd by Justin Gaethje, hurt by Tony Ferguson, and even get caught sometimes by Pettis in their rematch. That tends not to be the best kind of attack for him because he's going to fall into the counter shots of Niko Price, right? Just on Niko Price to counter to means on the back foot. He can absolutely do the same thing against Cerrone if Cerrone is blitzing him down. Everything about Cerrone is to keep it at the center of the cage and dominate with his long range kicks, back them up and start using his jabs to check them, keeping them honest and finding that head kick of his. If he exchanges in the boxing with Niko Price, he's going to get hurt 100%. Even if he's starting to get the better of Price, I do think that Price is going to be able to counter back at some point and catch Cerrone and keep him off, because Niko Price is one of the most powerful guys Cerrone's ever fought in his entire career. Right, when you look at guys like Robbie Lawler, Darren Till, so on and so forth, Niko Price is very near that kind of power, and he's way more lethal because of how wild and engaging he is. And that's why it makes this fight extremely hard to predict. This fight can go either way, it really can. Cerrone definitely has the skills and the technique to just pick at Niko Price at any given moment and not fall into anything dangerous. But if Cerrone does, if he starts blitzing down like he's been doing his last 4 or 5 opponents, Niko Price is going to catch him. So all it comes down to is Cerrone going to get out of his style and start blitzing down and do something he probably shouldn't be doing and getting caught for that. That's all it comes down to. So my prediction for this fight, I'm going to go with skills in this one. I do acknowledge that Niko Price can absolutely counter and knock out down Cerrone, but I'm going to go down Cerrone in this one. I think his experience is going to be a big factor as well. His grappling is much higher level than Niko Price's. His double leg will be able to get down Niko Price as a counter, and he just is a overall more technical striker. So I'm going to go down Cerrone in this one. I'm going to go by a second round submission. I think Price is going to get a little bit eager after the first round. Seeing that it's a bit too patient for his liking, he starts chasing for the knockout, falls into a double leg takedown, and eventually gets submitted on the ground. And then we go to the main event. Colby Covington versus Tyron Woodley. There's a lot riding on this fight. The narrative that most fans seem to have is that Colby Covington is going to do very similar to what Kamaru Usman and Gilbert Burns did. Kind of a hybrid, right? Keeping the pressure and the volume that Gilbert Burns was able to, while also attempting the takedowns against the cage and controlling the action through that. And if that happens, man, Tyron Woodley is in a very desperate place in his career. And to be honest, I do see that kind of happening in this fight. Tyron Woodley's chances come down to, can he counter Colby Covington? Can he find that opening inside the pressure, inside the combinations to land that big right hand? Because everywhere else, he's at a major disadvantage. Colby Covington can put himself in danger sometimes, but he's a lot more defensive minded than a lot of people give him credit for. Yes, he's rushing with a lot of strikes. Yes, he puts so much volume and pressure on the opponent. And it can seem like sometimes he's completely abandoning his defense, but he does have a good ability to pull on punches. You've seen that a few times against Kamaru Usman, even stunned Usman at one point with a pull counter of a left hand. He's done it many times against Robbie Lawler and RDA as well. And the thing about Tyron Woodley is he really only throws a few strikes. Overhand right, big looping right hook, or a right low kick. You rarely ever see him throw anything else unless he's forcing it out there, right? And because those punches are so big and obvious, Colby Covington will most likely be able to avoid those even when he puts that uber pressure on Woodley. I do see Woodley also trying to throw some uppercuts in there, counter right uppercuts that he threw at Damian Maia, because he does know that Covington is going to shoot him for takedowns when he pressures him against the cage. And that is one thing that Colby has to be mindful of 100%. And Colby's a very athletic guy, man. I mean, when you ever see him throw a tornado kick, I think it was at Robbie Lawler at the end of the fight, that is not an easy thing to do, especially for someone who doesn't have a background in Taekwondo. He threw it very well too, good form, good speed to it. So if he could throw things like that, flying knees and all sorts of different kind of techniques so freely out there, it does lead me to believe that he's going to be able to move in and out of some of the strikes of Woodley and potentially show something new in this fight that we haven't seen before. He has been very quiet. I understand he has left his gym of American Top Team. That could be a reason, but this could also be that he's working on new things, man. He's probably very focused on getting this victory. But under the chaos that Covington does bring, under the heavy amount of punches, he really does have to be mindful of that big right counter from Tyron Woodley. That's the main thing going for Woodley. He might pressure Covington and blitz him down and try to do something like that, but if he does that, Covington does have a counter takedown ready at all times, right? When Woodley is on the offense, what does he really have to counter a takedown? What does he really throw ever to counter a takedown? Some kind of upward attack. I've never seen him throw a knee before, besides one in the Thai plum against Darren Till, which is a completely different situation. I've never seen him throw an uppercut on the offensive. It's always big right overhand or something to set that up for it. And that is tailor-made for someone like Covington who's going to dive under for that double leg takedown. Even if you look at the stats, they don't tell you the full story, of course, but the takedown average of Covington, 5.69 takedowns per 15 minutes, is one of the highest in the UFC. Whether that works against Woodley or not, whether Woodley stuffs it or not, if Covington is able to chain wrestle and drive it to the cage, he's going to be able to put the fight into his world at any given moment. If Woodley wants to be offensive and try to blitz him down with that right hand, and Covington always shoots for the takedown, that means every single time Woodley's on the offensive, he's eventually going to get into Covington's world up against the cage again, unless he's able to figure something out and adjust in the fight and land some uppercut or knee or something like that, or bait out the takedown and counter him afterward. But I just do not see that coming from Tyron Woodley. So my prediction for this fight, I'm going to go with Colby Covington. I think he's going to be able to do very similar to what Kamaru Usman and Gilbert Burns did. If Covington loses, I really see him losing by just getting caught. Being a little bit too pressuring, a little bit too chaotic in there, and getting caught by that big right hand and getting knocked out or something like that. That's the main way I see him losing this fight, because leg kicks are not going to be much of help for Woodley, especially being in opposite stance. And trying to wrestle with Covington is only going to gas out Woodley, I believe. Catching Covington in the middle of those combinations, or at the end of them, or something like that, is the way I see Woodley winning this fight. But I do have Covington winning through the pressure, through the volume, through the smothering approach that he's going to bring out there, never allowing Woodley to be efficient in the fight, and getting the decision victory. And there seems to be a lot of fighters that people think are going to absolutely dominate their fights. From Hamza Chimaev to Colby Covington to Ryan Spann to Mackenzie Dern. I mean, there's a lot of fighters on this card that seem to be heavy favorites or should be heavy favorites. And that is great if you go and bet on the fights with mybookie.ag. So many opportunities in this one, and no one gives you better lines than they do. Like I said before, Hamza Chimaev is almost a 4-1 favorite. TJ Laramie is a 3-1 favorite. Jessica Rose Clark is a 2-1 favorite. So is Andre Ewell. Mayra Bueno Silva is also a 2.5-1 favorite, as is Kevin Holland. Mackenzie Dern is actually not that big of a favorite, which is kind of surprising. Johnny Walker is a favorite, which is kind of surprising. Nico Price is a little bit of a favorite, and Covington is a big over 3-1 favorite over Tyron Woodley. So many opportunities on this one, man. And if you're not just sold on just these fighters, I mean, you can always try a parlay. Just put a lineup of your fighters that you're confident in winning, and you could potentially multiply your earnings. And if you're confident in your fight picks, then you have to check out my bookie's super contest with prize pools of $100,000 or $300,000. Huge opportunity to win big money for those who are playing the bet on football this season. And guys, my bookie winning season has returned. The first deposit bonus they usually get, well, instead of them matching halfway up to $1,000, your first deposit is now doubled up to $1,000. That means if you deposit $200 for your first deposit, you get another $200 in free money to play with. Just use the promo code WEASEL to activate this offer. That's promo code WEASLE to take advantage of MyBookie's sign-up offer. Visit mybookie.ag today where you bet, you win, and when you win, you get paid. Now, a few of these odds are a little bit surprising. I'm a little bit surprised that Nico Price is the favorite. I would suspect Downstorm would be a little bit of a favorite, very slightly. Johnny Walker is also a favorite, which actually did shock me a bit. And Mackenzie Dern being just a moderate to slight favorite over Random Marcos, who completely complements Mackenzie Dern's style, is something I do not agree with at all. Rennie Costa versus Journey Newson should be a very close fight. Jessica Rose Clark should not be as big of a favorite as she is. Other than that, I do agree with the rest of the fight, so I hope you guys enjoyed the predictions. If you did, make sure to thumbs up, if you don't, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video, which will be the podcast.